Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Riding with Ryder back for another week, and what a dominant week it was for Montana State, 38-7 over Idaho, and I thought it was start to finish, as dominant as you could be in a football game. Mike Ryder, former Bobcat player and coach, joins us each week here on the Big Sky Breakdown podcast series and our Skyline Sports YouTube channel. Mikey, how you doing? What'd you think of the game on Saturday?
Yeah, doing good, Colter. Doing good. Yeah, I think a little bit surprised, truly, about how dominant that was on Saturday night. There were some big moments early on in that game that proved to be pivotal. I think that fourth down stop kind of really lit the fire under everybody on defense. But it was a dominant performance, especially in the trenches.
That's the two things that I noticed right just from the start. One, Montana State was knocking Idaho off the ball, both sides of the football. And Paul Brott talked about it, former Billings West alum like yourself. He talked about it in the postgame. He said, hey, that was our stated goal. Sean Howe wrote it on the board. Win the line of scrimmage, knock back your one-on-one every single time. And they did it on both sides of the ball. I thought their push up front was exceptionally impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, they especially on the offensive front too. I mean, not only defensive line did an incredible job, but a couple of those first runs, I mean, both there on offense, they were, 10 yards, 11 yards, 12 yards. And, you see a defense that has an opportunity to kind of rally, and they're on their heels, this Idaho defense, and they just never could. They couldn't rally. I mean, the push was so great up front. And, it wasn't really a case of a run fit here or there. It was actually just sheer will, it looks like, just kind of getting up in front of those guys, getting to the second level pretty quick. That Bobcat O-line just looks solid. And the crazy part is, I keep telling myself, like, they're still missing one of their best guys, right? With Perkins still out. Looks like he's slated to get back here next couple of weeks. But all in all, you win in the trenches, and both offensively and defensively, those guys should be proud of the performance.
Idaho was missing. Well, first of all, they were playing basically their fourth quarterback. He got hurt, so they went back to their third quarterback, and then they went with like their fifth guy down the stretch when they were kind of waving the white flag. They had a couple guys out on the offensive line, whatever. The point is, though, the defensive front was not hurt, and that's where I think that Montana State just made such an insane statement. Was they took a front seven that gave up 144 yards to Wyoming, 107 yards to Oregon, giving up 94 yards a game, and they rushed for 362 yards against them. It's just amazing to me, but also at this point, not surprising anymore when Montana State does this. I just think that the way that they roll off the ball, I just think they can physically dominate basically everybody in the country at pretty much all levels except for probably the Power Five.
Yeah, and I think it's like anything else in sports. You get a ton of confidence, right? I mean, yes, there's a technique and you have to go out and do it and you've got to perform. You have to do all that, but there is a confidence to just say, look, this is what we do. This isn't our identity. This is the core to what we do on offense. We run the football, and I don't really care who is in front of us. Now, of course, at some point there's physical limitations and what have you, but knowing that you lean into their scheme, which I think fits them really well. A lot of their zone scheme, I think it fits those guys pretty darn well. And then it's just part of a belief system. They know that this is what they do, and and credit to the offensive line coach doing such a good job, Al Johnson, getting those guys ready, and they've rotated guys in. So it'll be interesting to see if this continues to be the trend. I mean, we're 7 weeks in now, and we've seen it. And so every week it feels like you and I had this same conversation, but it's worth talking about every week because it happens every week. That's hard to do. Running the football and controlling the line of scrimmage is really hard to do. I don't care if you're 8th grade over at Ben Still Middle School here in Billings, which I was watching a friend's son play the other day, or at West High tonight, West High and Gallatin, which I'm going to go watch, or the Cats, or your Georgia, Alabama, or Georgia, Texas this weekend. If you can win the line of scrimmage, it's a big deal. And running the football and imposing your will on somebody is challenging. So it's just been impressive. And we'll see if they can continue it. They've got enough depth and confidence in it. And it's been fun to watch.
I was talking to JP Flynn earlier, former Montana State offensive lineman. He coaches at Gallatin, and that'll be a great game. Good Bobcats on both staffs for Gallatin.
Oh, yeah.
West, right? A whole bunch
Oh,
of
yeah.
over in that game, number 1 versus number 2. If you're listening to this on a Thursday, that's coming up at 7 p.m. tonight. So if you're in Billings, go to that game. That's gonna be a great game. Last 2 undefeated teams in the Class AA. But JP was saying the thing that it just blows his mind about it, because Montana State's had really good offensive lines basically for like 20 plus years. Starts with Mike Kramer and Jason McAdoo and all those guys. JP played on great offensive lines. The offensive line when you played was really good too. But the thing that made the offensive lines the best was when they had these units that had played 30, 35 straight games together. This is like completely plug and play. They haven't even had the same starting 5 in the same positions yet this whole season, except for 2 games. That's what makes it so crazy. It doesn't matter if it's Burke Mastel or JT Reed at left guard, Marcus Ware, Connor Moore, whoever you roll in at guard, tackle, Fleischman and Jefferson. Like that's the part that's just really, really, really fascinating to me, because that has to come down to, first of all, it shows you how talented these guys are, but more than that, it shows you the coaching to get those guys on the same page, man. Like Al Johnson is like a magician. I mean, it's amazing to be able to get those guys on the same page like they have so fast every single week.
Yeah. It's interesting because, offensive linemen for a long time, like, hey, you're like, yeah, I just play interior, I play guard, I can play left and right guard. You're a guard, right? It's like, and while that may be true in certain situations, it's pretty impressive to say, these guys are expected to know all the positions. And there's not a position group that needs to be, in better communication. I'd say the secondary is equally as important, but you have got to know what the other person is doing. And these guys, they just plug and play. They know the other people's responsibility, and they truly do operate as a unit. And we've seen it, right? You plug and play. How can that guy go from left guard to right tackle? Like, boy, that seems crazy to me. And it just says a lot about the coaching and the schemes. I think the schemes must be a way that they can learn it. And it takes elite coaching to be able to communicate to these guys their responsibility. They know what to do on Saturday when the bullets are flying. They can rotate and roll guys out there and switch positions and what have you. So I'm with you. I think kudos goes to Al Johnson, because getting those guys ready and understanding responsibilities, whatever position they're at, and understanding the greater good for the team and understanding how the whole picture fits together, it's impressive.
The other part, and this was actually nothing that happened Saturday in terms of the battle of the trenches surprised me. Yeah, I was texting you. I thought the Cats were going to win by 4+ touchdowns. I said on the radio during my Bobcat pregame show, I said 35-7, and I almost nailed it, 38-7. It's no slight to Idaho. And I'm not saying Montana State's better up front than Oregon or whatever. I just thought the scheme was very disadvantageous for Idaho. Idaho causes a lot of havoc with how quick and fast their front is. And it just doesn't matter because Montana State's front is so big, but also so fast. Like when they get their hands on you, they're just punishing you. And that's so much because of Marcus Ware and Connor Moore, NFL guys, in my opinion. So that didn't surprise me. The huge jump forward, though, and I thought Brent Vegan said it so well in the postgame. He said, Tommy Mellott's been great all year long, start to finish. But nobody's giving him any credit because he's doing it against Utah Tech and Mercyhurst and Maine and whatever. Well, now he did it against Idaho. They unleashed him. If he plays like he played on Saturday, just with the efficiency of getting in and out of stuff and making the correct decision basically 100% of the time, I don't know how you beat Montana State. I thought that was as good as Mellott has looked in a regular season game, maybe in his career.
Yeah. The word you used was efficiency, and that's exactly what it was. It just seemed like he knew exactly what he was going to be doing with the football. Right? Yeah, you hand it off, but then there was a couple of those shots. The reads were what they were supposed to be, and it seemed like he just knew where the ball should be at all moments. And look, this is just whatever 3.5 years. You call that playoff run up, half season, I suppose. but he's playing a lot of football, and I think they're just continuing to figure out who he is as a passer. You and I've talked about that from week one to now. Not a lot of balls over the middle. We haven't seen any dig routes. We don't see any post routes. That's not the game. They're going to work from the hashes outside. They're going to get the ball in the perimeter using some jet sweeps. They're going to run the vertical, play action. Get those tight ends in the seam off of some of those play action shots. Those deep comebacks. They know who they are offensively. I think they're just continuing to settle in, and you could tell he just knew where he's going with the football. And you'd hope that that's exactly where they'd be, with your senior leader, your captain who's done so much. And then, by the way, you throw in the fact that he's able to run the football, which we haven't seen a lot of the quarterback run game. You put that in a little bit, a few wrinkles, and boy, he looks natural doing it. So I think he's probably in as good a position, both individually and collectively as an offense as they want to be, that Bobcat offense. So excited to see if they can continue, that type of dominance up front. And these teams are now, what are they going to do to combat it? I don't know, crazy pressures, and things like that. What's Portland State, who struggles, mightily against the run? Are they going to try and mix some stuff up and pre-snap movement, all that good stuff? Because that's what teams are going to try and do now. Because they're not going to be able to go toe-to-toe and just do what they do and try and think they're going to stop the Bobcat run game.
Montana State's offense has been doing this without a couple of their key players, and Justice Perkins at center and Julius Davis at running back. Brent Vegan said on Cat Chat last night that Davis will be back, not this week, but next week. He's going to play the last 4 games of the regular season, utilize a red shirt, and then he'll be back next year. So that's a good boost for Montana State. Justice Perkins, not sure what his status is, but he has been doing at least walkthroughs at practice, so maybe he's getting closer to getting back. On the defensive side now, though, Mikey, the injuries are mounting. Montana State lost Caden Dowler a couple weeks ago, then Blake Schmidt last week, and then Danny Ulakepa this most recent week. Dowler is a key piece because he's got so much position versatility, but they also have a whole bunch of guys in the secondary that can sort of step up and fill those spots, I think. The other two are huge losses. I mean, Blake Schmidt's your best interior guy, one of the best interior guys in the league. And Danny Hughes, your best linebacker, flat out, point blank, period. And that's the spot you probably have the least depth. So what do you think of those two most recent injuries to the middle of the Bobcat defense?
Yeah, both killer, right? But I do think I've been impressed with Bryce Greavy. For a freshman to come in and do what he's done. I mean, he looks good physically, but getting some guys lined up, that's where you struggle. I mean, if you watch Danny Yu, he's played a lot of football, and you just see him. He gets little guys lined up. Even Saturday night last week, watching him, getting those interior guys, making sure you're sliding over a gap or whatever that looks like. That's what your middle linebacker does. And so, on top of the mental side of it, can they compete physically and at the point of attack? And so it's going to be a lot for Bryce Greavy. Look, Bobby Daly, he's did it at a really high level. He'll have those guys ready to go. I don't know if you simplify the game plan or if you just expect them to do exactly what Danny was required to do. And then, Neil Daly, he's going to have a role, another Billings West product. Is he able to do that? We'll see. Those are tough losses. I think you play quite a bit of nickel. It's helpful to get Drew Polidor back. Boy, he was an impact guy right out of the gate. That first tackle, from a safety perspective, it was so unbelievable. And
is he lead?
It was awesome.
Is he lead?
I'm gonna probably, hopefully he's not listening. I'm gonna say he's definitely he has a shot. I was really shocked when he went from corner to safety because he really wasn't all that physical playing corner. Right. And then he went to safety, and I was kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to translate because physically, I mean, you got to come downhill and do the whole thing. And boy, have I been so wrong. I mean, he is physical. He takes good angles. That first play, I don't think people understand how challenging that is, Colter. Like, it's hard to make an open field tackle from 10 to 12 yards. Well, he ran the alley on a jet sweep inside out, perfect angle, long stride, short stride, and takes the guy down. I was so impressed by just that one tackle. And it was his first play from the
First
from
play of the
scrimmage.
season, man.
It was so great. You can tell how giddy that stuff makes me because I know how hard that is.
Yeah, man, you could tell he was chomping at the bit. I don't know what his next level prospects are, but I agree with you. He was sort of just kind of like a long, lean cover corner, and I thought he had the ability to cover, but he had some actually deficiencies at corner. And I agree. When they moved him to safety, I was like, maybe they're just doing it for depth. He'll probably just be a backup. And then he just exploded onto the scene. And if he hadn't have gotten hurt, I think he's an all-league guy because he's just a special talent. He pops off the film. He pops off when you see him in person, certainly. Big Sky Breakdown, proudly presented by the Bobcat Collective at Montana State. The Bobcat Collective is the NIL collective that serves Montana State University student athletes. The collective is partnered with Montana State to connect fans, alumni, businesses, and local nonprofits with Montana State student athletes. Opportunities through the collective allow student athletes to earn compensation while serving the greater Montana State University community. Sign up now for memberships and enjoy automatic entry into raffles for free tickets while supporting the bright minds at Montana State. They have multiple different membership tiers, and you can also be a one-time supporter, and you can also business partner or corporate supporter. Visit bobcatcollective.com for more. When it comes to, I think one part, you mentioned the on-the-field stuff with Danny Yu in terms of captain of the defense. He's getting everybody lined up. He's calling it, all that sort of stuff. They lose that. That's a huge loss. Hopefully McCade O'Reilly can figure out a way to pick up that stuff. Yeah, Brody Grebe will probably be involved in some form or fashion too, just because he's played so many snaps. But I do think the one silver lining is that those guys, I asked Vegan about this on Monday. I said, hey, are you going to still travel those guys? And he said, you know what? We probably are, because we want Blake Schmidt on the sideline. We want Danny Yu on the sideline. We want them coaching guys, right?
Yeah.
Paul Broad talked about last week. He said, hey, my best coach in the game is Blake Schmidt. He tells me exactly what to do. He tells me when I'm not getting my ass in gear. So those guys, I think, can still be leaders even if they aren't on the field.
Yeah, it seems so cliche, Colter, like when people talk about, oh yeah, he's a coach on the field and a coach on the sideline. But really, like, those guys are literally fresh off of playing. They should be, they know exactly what it takes from, physically, mentally. So you take a guy like Danny Yu, you take a guy like Blake Schmidt, who they know exactly what it takes. And don't get me wrong, coaches know what they're doing, but they're not like weeks from taking weeks from playing reps, right? Like, it's been a long time since Sean Howe is lined up at a defensive line, right? Or Bobby Daly, which it doesn't just credit. I'm just saying, when you have like an actual in-game experience, it just becomes very, very relative. And so when you got guys that are willing to listen to a Danny Yu and to a Blake Schmidt, they can just be a tremendous impact, player as they're now shifting and going to the coaching role. And then just from a morale standpoint, I mean, that's a big deal. Those guys have high expectations for that defense. They're some of the guys that have built those expectations. They've seen and they know what that Bobcat D needs to get to. And I think you want those guys around, and it makes total sense that Vegan's going to travel.
When it comes to this trip, then Portland State, I guess one more question on the defensive side before we get to Portland State, and then I'll let you go. Do you feel like linebacker is a spot where you can actually cultivate depth within games? Like, do you feel like guys playing will help them accelerate? It feels like that's one of the spots maybe where if you throw a freshman out there, his learning curve can get accelerated quite a bit.
Yeah.
That's what's going to have to happen with Bryce Grebe.
Yeah, I think it can happen. They got to have the physicality first and foremost. I guess I'll say it this way. Depends on where in the stage of their development they're at. Because there are some guys that's just like, look, they've got it physically. For the most part, pretty sound, getting guys lined up and being in the right gap and knowing what to do, play in and play out. But maybe it's just a reps thing, and they're just high reps. Like, okay, well, how do you get them now? There's no better way to do it now than getting a whole bunch of practice reps because you're forced into the fire. And then all of a sudden you get a little bit of, confidence and you create that depth. But then, look, I'm not going to lie to you. There's also some people that you're a 3 because you're a 3 and you're not, like, you lack physically and you can't get lined up. So I am not in those meeting rooms. None of us are, so we don't know what the case is. But there's a reason that those guys are getting some reps. A guy like Neil Daly, there's a guy. I mean, Bryce Grebe has been on the field. It's not he hasn't played at all. There's a reason they're getting. He's getting some reps. It's because they clearly trust him to do his assignment. He's physically, ready to go. So I think you can create that depth, but that's not equal for all players. Probably a stupid comment, but I think some guys will accelerate and some guys will continue to get better and better. And they better. They don't have a choice. This Bobcat, he doesn't have anybody else. And so they better figure it out. And maybe that means some tweaks in the playbook, simplifying, a few things here or there. I'm not sure, but Bobby Daly, I'm sure he's got some pretty good answers.
No doubt. Oh, and I mean, I totally agree with you because I do think like the point of entry to get on the field, there's several different tickets to ride, right? The thing that's holding you back is sometimes because you're not physically developed enough, sometimes because you're not, you don't have the reps, you don't have the mental part down. The thing with Grebe, and he's just the latest of these, small school, small town guys. The physical part, I mean, he's 6'3", 225. I mean, he's got it. He's got the physical part. He runs really well. He moves really well. He just doesn't know where he's going yet, but he's figured it out. I mean, I thought his jumps from game 2 to game 7 have been huge, and I think you've seen that already. And now more reps, I think, is going to be better for him. So,
yeah, and I think it's so interesting because when these injuries happen, I can't help but think about some of the things that happened during my tenure. And I'm not going to use names, but there are people that you get hurt and so-and-so is in the game and you're like, boy, I know that he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Right. Like I know that we're in trouble because that guy, I've been in the film room. I've seen all that. That's one thing, right? It's another thing to be like, hey, he's a 3 because he's young. But from what I can tell, he's pretty gap assignment sound and knows what he's doing, pretty tough and physical. He's playing behind some really good guys. So, hey, I feel good about him stepping up. But those guys in that locker room know. We won't ever know. I mean, they're going to play with the guys they have, but I can't help but think about some of the guys I played with because those guys in the locker room, they know exactly who's capable and who is like, that we can't lose another guy there because that guy does not need to be getting any reps. So kind of it always just takes you back.
It's just the funny part to me, though, is you're so right. And that was such a story of Montana State football for when you were playing, when you were coaching. Great front line, but then if you start getting decimated, who's next? Who's up? How bad can it derail you? That's what this staff deserves so much credit for. They hardly ever have to put any turd birds on the field, man. They got dudes that are ready to roll pretty much across the board. They're going to have a big test now, though, with this position they're the most thin at getting beat up. When it comes to Portland State, I hate the cliches, but this is a trap game. It is because it's you're at a weird place. You're on the road. It's the most atypical stadium in the league because it's not a stadium. It's a high school field. It's an hour from the city where you're staying. It's just a weird deal, man. It's a weird scenario. You're gonna have to bring your own energy, all that stuff. And also, Bruce Barnum can coach. Portland State's got a 1-5 record because of the terrible schedule they had to play. This only their second home game. So, I mean, of course, they're 1-5. They had to play 2 money games and 2 ranked FCS teams on the road. So, I'm not making excuses for them, but they are better than their record. So, how does Montana State stay hot, keep it rolling this weekend?
Man, they got to lean into who they are run game wise. We talked about this a lot, but your running game, it travels at this level. If you can run the football, you're in good shape. And, it's not like there's this, you're going to throw the ball 40 or 50 times. Or just there's just so much that can go wrong when even if you're we're just a really balanced team. We pass it, just as much as we run it. Okay, good. That's helpful. What happens if you're, if things just don't go perfectly and all of a sudden you just get behind the sticks, you're in trouble, right? But I just feel like the run game is such a good thing to lean into, and it does travel whether you're at home. There's just a toughness factor. I mean, there's not a lot of flash this run game that they are bringing to the opponents, and I think it just needs to maintain and not try and overdo things. not get behind the sticks. They've got to do a really good job defensively. Sachere he's a heck of a player, very gifted. And then look, these games, special teams always work. You can't give them a cheap one. You can't be in crappy field position. You know, the penalties, it's all cliche, but it's so true. You know, the penalties and the special teams and, you know, dominant run game and making sure that you're not having MAs and blown assignments on defense. You can't be giving this team legs up because they will take it, and they've always got some athletes here and there, and they're at home. And so you can't falter. This is a big one for the Cats on the road.
So funny how I feel like half the kick returns for touchdowns I've ever seen have been in Portland. I don't know why that is. Either for Montana or Montana State or against Montana or Montana State. There's always somebody that messes up and somebody goes to the house there in Portland. Mike Ryder joining us here on Riding with Ryder each week on the Big Sky Breakdown podcast series and our Skyline Sports YouTube channel. Mikey, good to see you, man. Thanks for doing it.
Likewise. Appreciate you, Colter.
Will you marry me in your future? Or maybe you do it all over again. Hi, I'm Brian Toon with Jewelry Design Center, inviting you to come see the largest selection of Will You Marry Me in the state of Montana. The brightest diamonds of every shape and size, unique settings built to last, and skilled jewelers on site offering free sizing and maintenance for life, because that's how long we want to be your jeweler. Jewelry Design Center in Missoula, on Brooks, across from the Montana Club.